Alright, so we're going to replace the crankcase vent valve, the CCV, on this E46. We're going to start by taking out the microfilter, which you'll loosen it up and take this apart. And then we're going to get underneath, take the torque screws out, take this positive cable loose and just lay it to the side. And alright, so this just pulls right out, and the filter pulls right out. Then we're going to take out these T30 torques. Okay, I've got all the torques loose. We're going to take the weather stripping off, and then the tray. Alright. Okay, now we gotta take off these little covers, take off the M6 bolts in there. That one was missing the cover. And then that will let us take this other engine cover off so we can get to the hoses for the CCV. Okay, now that we got that engine cover off, I loosened this hose clamp. I'm going to take this MAP sensor connector loose, the two M6 bolts here, and take the air cleaner assembly out. Also, we got to take the intake scoop out, and then the air cleaner assembly. Also, the harness right here, you got to pull it off, and then the air cleaner comes out. Alright, so there's two intake boots here. Loosen the first clamp and we'll get the first one out, and then work on taking the rest of the components out. Okay, so to get the second boot off, you need a T40 Torx, and you're going to take out this bolt here and then one underneath here and disconnect this connector. Okay, once you have the T40 bolts out of the intake runner, you can pull it back and twist it till it clears and then pull it out. And also, if this thing rattles, you want to replace it. A lot of times they make a lot of noise. Okay, so the clamps for the second boot can be a bit tricky. Depending on which way they're facing, you can use a universal 6mm, a deep or a short, and just work with whatever options you have to get them loose. For example, this one I can get with the 6mm on a long quarter extension. So again, depending on how someone else put them back, you have to work with it, but once you get them loose, you can get the boot out. Okay, so for the dipstick tube, I like to take this M8 bolt out. It's a 13mm head. And once you get it out, I like to just swing the dipstick tube out of the way. I don't pull it completely out of the oil pan, because that means you got to replace that seal down there. Alright, so I just keep it out of the way, and then we can get to removing the harness behind here. Okay, so the harness is mounted here with an M6 nut, right here with the M6 bolt, and down here at the throttle body with a nut. So you take those three out, and then you can loosen the harness and unplug the idle air valve, and now you can swing it out of the way so you can remove the throttle body and work on everything else. Okay, so next we got to take these T40 Torx out to take the idle air control bracket out, and press in this clip and take the connector out for the idle air valve. Okay, so now that we got the bracket loose and the connector disconnected, we can twist the idle valve around and pull on it and take it out. There you go. There's the idle valve. It is a good thing to spray some cleaner down in there when you reinstall it and try to blow it out and get it as clean as you can. Okay, now we need to get the throttle body out. We're going to take out these 4M6 right here and the one nut holding the harness back on the lower right portion there. Okay, so now that we have the throttle body unbolted and disconnected, we can lift it out. Be careful about the one stud on the bottom. It's hooked up to the harness. You gotta release it. That's this one right here. And there we have it. Alright, so to get this bottom dipstick tube line out, I like to use a long flathead pry bar and I lean it against the strut tower and I'll twist it, and that's what makes it break loose. If not, just come apart nicely. There we go. So now we got that one loose. Alright, so to take the two CCV bolts out, I like to use this extended T25 socket. I know I said it was a T30 before, but it's actually a T25, but you can get it right in there and take both the top and bottoms out. Alright, now that we got the two hold down bolts out, the CCV is loose. See if I can get a good view of it. So it's loose, but what's holding it in is that breather hose and that one. So we're going to try to snap these loose. This one might actually come out okay. Okay, so we got one out. We might have to break this one in half so that we can get it out, but we'll see if we can get it out in one piece down there. And same thing with this one. Alright, so we're going to take these four T25 out, one right here, one over there, so we can take this breather hose out, which is attached to that one. Alright, so here too, these O-rings get stuck in there. What I do is I stick my flathead pry bar in there and I wiggle it up and down, gently though, so I don't snap it, and then I do that to each section. And that's what helps me get them out. Alright, and that thing should be loose. Alright, so this hose needs to be pinched right here and wiggled around in order to come out. Alright, that hose doesn't want to come out, so we're going to break it there, but over here we got a connection that we're going to have to take apart to disconnect it. Alright, so I've broken this hose off right here, and we're going to see if that's enough to sneak it under the manifold when we pull the CCV out. And if it's not, we're going to have to break it or cut it a little bit closer there. Alright, so to start, we're going to push this hose as far down as we can. And we're going to simultaneously pull on the CCV. Okay, so the CCV does not want to come out without getting that lower hose out. It's just too stiff. So I'm trying to get it out with the hose pick right here. And between that and trying to break it loose from the valve will give us the edge that we need to get it out. Alright, so that did the trick, and it's loose. Now we're going to try to get it up and out of the way. There we go. Alright, so now we got two of the hoses loose. The bottom one on the CCV and the main breather, and we got this one shoved here. So we grab the CCV from the bottom and we pull and try to clear the electrical harness. Meanwhile, pushing down on this one like that. We need to help this one go down. There we go. There we go. Obviously it broke, but at least we got it out. Now putting it back together, we're going to put the hoses in individually, so it's not going to be the same as taking this out. But you can see that save a lot of time without having to take the intake manifold out. And you know, some of the problems that you can have when you take the intake out, you know, breaking other brittle hoses or wiring. So there you have it. We're going to start putting it back together. And here's that broken piece. Alright. One last hose to take out is this bottom one, which goes to the dipstick tube. Now what I like to do with that is cut it down there at the dipstick tube with a razor blade. Slice it horizontally and I'll peel it right off the tube if it doesn't come out on its own. Okay, so for the hose on the dipstick, we're going to cut it horizontally. Alright, so now that I got it cut, sometimes you got to peel it back with a hose pick. Sometimes it'll slide right off. Okay, and then we'll pull it through. Okay, and there's our dipstick hose. And this is the cut I put in it to get it off. Alright, so this is the new CCV kit here, and here's the CCV valve, and where these two holes are is where it's mounted to the intake manifold with the T30 Torx. And pay attention to this nipple right here. It needs a vacuum cap, and a lot of times people forget to put that on and you'll have a vacuum leak and it will cause a lean condition. So this is the valve that's going to go under the intake that we're going to sneak out. Alright, so now we're going to put it back together. I think the first hose that I like to put in is the dipstick tube hose. And get that out of the way. You want to fish it right through the same hole that it came out of, back here. Run it against the block. And we're going to push it right into the dipstick down in there. Alright, so we're going to put the CCV valve in, the new one, and remember it goes like this with the smaller nipple facing down. And when you put it in, you're going to put it downward, and then you're going to tilt it upward. Alright, so it's going to go down in here, and then we're going to tilt it up and get it to sit straight so we can put the mounting bolt screws in. Alright, so I've got the new valve mounted in there, and now I'm going to reach down in there and pop this lower breather hose on. You're going to have to, because it's a new hose, it's not going to sit just right. You're going to have to grab it with both hands and push upward. And with this hose, if you can't get it pushed up by hand and you can't get the leverage, then use a hose pick like this and grab the bottom of the hose and pry on the engine mount bracket and gently push upward, and you can get it to lock into place. Okay, it's time to put this hose in. It will go right through this hole and down under here and attach to the CCV. And once we get it lined up, we can push it with the flathead and lock it into place, and then we can come back here around here and we can lock it up here. We'll have to twist it to get it to line up with the valve cover. Alright, so I've got the hose on, and you want to check with the mirror and make sure it's seated all the way, because if it's not, you're going to have a vacuum leak. So make sure it's clicked in and seated. And then come up here and you can twist this one and pop it on. Remember, these type of connectors only go on perfectly if it's lined up with the hose and the nipple that it's going into. Alright, so this second to last hose, it's a little bit tricky to get in, but it's going to go through the center right here, and then it's going to plug in right under the intake on the CCV. And you got to kind of get your hands in here, and if it's a little bit easier, you can take this purge valve bracket out with the 2 Torx bolts, and that should give you some room to stick your hands in there. Alright, so what you want to do is press in the clip and pull the connector out, and then pull the purge valve out and lay it aside, and then we can get to the 2 bolts up here. Okay, so with the purge hose bracket out of the way, you can get to the hose a little bit easier, and you can reach your hand down in here to help push it into the spot on the CCV valve. Alright, so you know the hose is in place when it clicks into its lock on the CCV valve, but that's how it should look, just like that. And then when you come up here, it's a new hose, so it's not going to be angled right, but when we hook up the air pipe, we're going to twist it so that it lines up. Alright, so now we're going to reinstall the air distribution pipe and just line them up with the O-ring. And you can do it both ways. You can install this first, the hose into the pipe, and then push the pipe down, or you can push the pipe down first and then install the hose afterward. Okay. Alright, so this is our last hose, and it goes right in here, and it'll just click right in. And into the air pipe. Alright, so now that we got the CCV in and all the hoses, and we're working backwards to put everything back together, when we do the throttle body, I like to clean it. Almost always there's a small carbon ring. There's carbon on the back side. I just use any type of throttle body cleaner. Spray it down, wipe it out with a rag. Open the throttle blade with your hand and hold it with one finger and then wipe around to get all the carbon out. I think this step makes a huge difference on most drivability on cars. Okay, so after cleaning the throttle body, it should look something like that. Try to get as much carbon as you can off.